everyone. Welcome to episode 249 of the Book Cougars, two middle-aged women on the hunt for a good read. I'm Emily.
And I'm Chris.
She's over there shaking her head because we just turned 9.
We did. We've been doing this 9 years.
Yeah. December is always our anniversary of the very first time we sat down together with Chris's iPhone in the middle of the table and decided we would learn to become podcast hosts.
Yes. It's been quite the adventure.
It has.
And I can't believe we've done this 249 times.
I know. Here we go.
But we'd like to start with a big thank you to our patrons who help keep us going. Thank you all. And we also wanted to give a reminder to everyone about our affiliate, bookshop.org.
Yeah, Bookshop is a place that you can go where you can both support independent bookstores and the Book Cougars. And what we mean by that is when you sign up for an account with bookshop.org, you can choose an independent bookstore that will get a percentage of all of your shopping, an affiliate percentage of all of your shopping. But Bookshop also allows for organizations like us to have affiliate pages as well. So they give money to the independent bookstore and they give a little cut to the Book Cougars when you do your shopping there.
Yes, through our Bookshop page. And we'll put a link in the show notes to that.
And any link in our show notes goes to our Bookshop page, just so you know.
Yeah, and in episode 247, we shared our annual holiday gift ideas, and Bookshop gift cards are always a good option.
They're great, and they offer them in all sorts of denominations, including a denomination of your choice. I know I love getting a gift card. I find it is like one of the most fun things in the world.
Yeah, I think they're amazing. I love getting a bookstore gift card. They're the best.
Chris, what are you currently reading?
Well, I have been reading, or I was reading, I should say, A Thread Across the Ocean, The Heroic Story of the Transatlantic Cable. This is by John Steele Gordon. Laura and I went on a little vacation, and I took the book with me, but I did not take it out of my backpack. So I kind of stalled on it. I'm on page 40. And I picked it up this morning because we just got home. And I'm like, it's just not grabbing me. It's very interesting, but I think I'm going to put it aside again for next year and try it then because I just lost steam on it. But it had been good until that point.
I get it. Yeah, time and place for your reading. We talk about that a lot. Well, it's funny you should say that because I'm reading The Last Witch by C.J. Cook, which we've had in Book Cougars headquarters for quite some time. It has this really compelling cover with a woman's face in profile, obviously a woman from generations long ago, and this very vibrant yellow star with a circle around it. And I finally took it home and thought, I'm going to try to dig into this over the holidays. And whoa, mama, did I lose myself in it. First, I want to read the epigraph. Let me start with that. And this will give you some insight into what it's about. Each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women. That's Maya Angelou, July 23rd, 2007. And this is about a woman, Helena, who's living in Innsbruck, Austria. It's 1485. She's doing what women typically did then, trying to be a good wife and get pregnant. And they come from some means. And one of her childhood friends and her 6-year-old daughter, she learns, have just been burned at the stake, accused of witchcraft. And the priest, with a nod from the Pope or the Pope's approval, who's been on this witch hunt, literally, comes to her town and talks in front of a crowd at a church and encourages people to come forward, essentially, and accuse their neighbors or whomever, their sister, their mother, of witchcraft. And so suddenly Helena finds herself imprisoned with a group of women who have all been accused of witchcraft. And the priest who is responsible for this is cunning and he's cruel. So I do want to say, content warning, there is a lot of difficult torture to read in this novel. So if that is not your thing, I would not read this story. But I find it very compelling. I know that C.J. Cook wrote this based on a true story. I've not read the author's note, which is in the back. So I'm looking forward to getting to that because I am curious about that. But I find that the writing is really compelling. It's a fast read, and it's horrific to think about how women have been treated throughout time, in large part because men are afraid of them. And I feel like she's painting that picture really well here, and with really great characters as well. So again, it's called The Last Witch by C.J. Cook, and it is out now. And thank you to Berkeley for this copy.
Well, I just started reading The Award by Matthew Pearl. This book just dropped on December 2nd, and it was recommended by Hank Philippi Ryan, who we ran into at the Harvard bookstore a couple weeks ago when we were there for an event. More to come on that in Biblio Adventures. I asked her, I was like, so what have you been reading lately that's really sparked you, you know? And she's like, oh, The Award by Matthew Pearl. I was like, oh my God, Matthew Pearl. I didn't even know he had another book coming out. I've really enjoyed him. I haven't read all of his books, but he's a writer who I've known about since his first release, The Dante Club, many moons ago. I mean, in the early 2000s, I believe, is when that book came out. He was at the Chicago Book Fair, and Laura and I attended his event because I was, you know, really kind of interested in this whole Dante Club because it was set in the 19th century with Longfellow, who was one of the first Americans to translate Dante's Divine Comedy. And the other cast of characters are 19th century writers. And I was like, oh, this sounds really good. And I really enjoyed that first novel. And Laura and I really enjoyed meeting him and hearing his spiel because he was brand new, right? What Behind the Ears author and pretty young. And he was talking about how the publisher wanted him to write this bio of himself to make himself, you know, sound good. He's like, oh my God, like, what have I done? Yeah. So he wrote that he won this translation award, you know, and he's
in
like,
high school.
Well,
no, I'm just kidding.
It was like, it was either high school or college. I think it could have been high school. I'm not sure. It could have been college. He had a really wonderful presentation and charming and made the audience laugh a lot. So
I love that. Like, as if writing a novel isn't enough.
I know, right? Exactly, right? So he's really a charming guy. And I remember reading an interview with him where he was sitting in his house in Massachusetts somewhere with a big front window, something to that effect. Who knows? It could have been in one of his books for all I know. Back to the current day, I'm starting to read The Award, and it's about a young couple in Cambridge, Massachusetts, home of Harvard, who they're looking for a place to live. And they're in this third story of an old home in Cambridge. Third stories for rent. They're there with the realtor. They have to walk up these rickety external stairwell to get up to the apartment, and it narrows as you're going higher. And the place is wonderful when you get up there. There's light and everything. They eventually start talking about price and landlords and all that kind of stuff. It's over $3,000 for this little space up there. And he's a writer who is just starting out. He's been struggling to write his first novel. She works at a nonprofit, so they have one income. It's a lot of money, over $3,000, right? And he's like, how would we even get our furniture up here with that stairwell? And she's like, oh, well, there's this thing in your lease where there's this trap door that goes to a crawl space, that goes to another trap door that goes down to the first floor. And those tenants have to give you access to bring your furniture up that way. So they're like, oh, that's great. The woman asks if that's their landlords. And she's like, well, no, they're not your landlords. They're tenants. And she says the name of who the guy is, and he's some famous author. So all along, the new young writer has been saying, like, no way, we're not going to live here. It's too expensive. We can never get our stuff up here. He's full of angst about writing his novel and is he good enough and all that. But then when he finds out it's a famous writer who lives downstairs, he's like, oh, we'll take it. But in the little notes from prior realtors, there's a note saying something to the effect of, like, warn tenants not to mention that the guy downstairs is an author, or something to that effect. And that's where I left it off. I just read the preview. So really kind of captured me already. It starts off really kind of fun, a little sarcastic, and then it does take a turn. So more to come on this. Thanks for the recommendation, Hank. hope I didn't spoil anything. It's just the free preview that I read so far.
Yeah, and Hank's kind of the queen of the twists and turns in her book. So if it captured her, because I think I remember her saying she didn't see some of the things coming, which is always what, you want with a good read.
And so to turn it back to what I was saying about, reading that interview with Matthew Pearl and the window in his home in Massachusetts, that's what I'm picturing now, is this young writer. Of course, I can't separate the character from him as a young writer. That's going on in my mind. And then the location, Cambridge, where we just were. It's just, I thought, if I'm going to read it, let's just dive in now. Yeah. So,
Cool.
So that is The Award by Matthew Pearl.
Well, I'm reading An Everlasting Meal, Cooking with Economy and Grace by Tamar Adler. And I picked this book up in the used section of the Harvard bookstore when we were there. So we're both reading books that have to do with that Biblio adventure. And this has a foreword by Alice Waters. I have some of Tamar Adler's other books, and she has one that just released this week, which I've also had an arc of, called Feast on Your Life, Kitchen Meditations for Every Day. And one of the things that I appreciate about Tamar is that she writes about cooking in a very narrative style. So think Laurie Colwin, think MFK Fisher. If you're a fan of that kind of writing, you will enjoy Tamar Adler. And even what I call narrative recipes, which is how I refer to Laurie Colwin's books, where, you're in the middle of reading something in paragraph style and then you'll come across a recipe. So it's not like a classic cookbook, but she is talking about food. And every chapter in this book starts with the words how to. So for example, number 1 is how to boil water. Number 2 is how to teach an egg to fly. 3, how to stride ahead. And I really like her writing style. I also did download the audiobook and have to admit that I started with that. I was taking a bath one night and I was like, I just want to listen to someone talk to me about food. And it was really nice because the foreword by Alice Waters was actually read by Alice Waters, who has such a captivating voice. I'm really enjoying it. I highly recommend it. And also, if you happen to be someone who enjoys a Substack newsletter, Tamar has a really fun Substack called The Kitchen Shrink. So the Kitchen Shrink is in, and people will ask her questions and then she answers them in a very kind of like Cheryl Strayed's Dear Sugar kind of way. It's not straightforward. There's usually a story behind her answer, but there are always questions about food and cooking. So it's a lot of fun. And I'll put links to that in the show notes. So again, it's called An Everlasting Meal, Cooking with Economy and Grace by Tamar Adler.
I love that we're both reading a book from that Biblio adventure.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen all the time.
No, it's fun.
Cool. So Emily, what did you just read?
Well, I finished The Chicken Sisters by K.J. Dell'Antonia. I talked about this as, currently reading, obviously, a few episodes ago now, and it was my palate cleanser after How to Sell a Haunted House. By Grady Hendrix. There was a lot of slicing and dicing and blood and guts in that novel. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. But I needed some good old-fashioned, cupcake reading that I talk about enjoying. And this was just a fun, light book about two sisters who, for historical familial reasons, aren't talking to each other anymore and own competing restaurants selling fried chicken. And one of the daughters decides it would be a good idea to bring a reality television show called Food Wars to town where they could have a fried chicken cook-off. It was silly, I wouldn't say this is highbrow literature, but it was the perfect palate cleanser at the time for me. And it did have a few things that surprised me, which I appreciated because I wasn't expecting that. Sometimes you're looking for something predictable when you pick up a book like this, and it wasn't predictable. So I appreciated that. And I will say that Laura Zigman, who's an author whose writing I adore, wrote on the back, the blurb says, "The comfort food of novels." And I think that's the perfect blurb for this. So if you're looking for something that has some fun food and family drama, again, The Chicken Sisters by K.J. Dell'Antonia.
Well, I finished Citizen Reporters, S.S. McClure, Ida Tarbell, and the Magazine That Rewrote America. This is by Stephanie Gorton, and I love this book. I really enjoyed reading every page of it. It was a real page turner for me, and I didn't want it to end. It's kind of like historical biography, if that makes sense. It is about S.S. McClure, who was the publisher of McClure's Magazine, and Ida Tarbell, who was his star reporter and the first staff reporter, you could say, that he had. They were both born in the same year, I think 1857. And he had a real eye for talent. And she was a real talented writer, one of the first investigative journalists in our country who really dug into the archives and other sources to find the, quote, truth of things, and also write in an engaging way. And I want to learn more about both of them. Maybe more about her, Ida Tarbell, who as a young girl vowed not to get married because she wanted to live the life of the mind. And McClure, he was a guy who really worked hard, but he did have some mental health challenges and some maybe neurodivergent challenges, possibly. She doesn't speculate on what his challenges were. I kind of feel like he had maybe ADHD and bipolar, possibly, that, you know, unchecked got very out of control as he got older and wealthy. So I'm not as interested in him, even though Willa Cather Ghost wrote his autobiography.
Oh, wow.
But Ida Tarbell, she wrote this huge series about Standard Oil and really pursued Rockefeller and other stories as well. But she was really known for that series. And it is considered one of the best investigative journalism pieces from the 20th century. And I'm slightly tempted to read it.
I was going to say, Did you pull it up as you were reading this?
I did not. I am interested in reading a full biography of her, because I should say that Gorton is really clear at the beginning of her book that the focus of this is about the rise and fall of McClure's Magazine, but there is biographical info on their earlier lives and then what happens after McClure's, after things kind of start falling apart. So the main focus of the book is pretty much from 1893 to when there was a big staff walkout in 1906. And it was then that Cather was hired by McClure to come edit the magazine, to be an editor there. And their relationship was fascinating. I think they really loved each other and they were really good friends. And Ida Tarbell was friends with his wife as well, and worked with her to help keep him in a healthy space, you know, because he was kind of that whirlwind who would come into the office and upset everything.
Oh, I've never worked with people like that.
Right? Yeah. And I should say the book does highlight some of the other reporters who were working at this time doing great work, because they became known as the muckrakers. And this is a term that comes from Pilgrim's Progress, which is a classic text, and Roosevelt calling them muckrakers, when one of the reporters in part was instrumental in his rise to national political prominence. But then once he became a subject of the reporting in a different way, he then started attacking them as being muckrakers, which really makes quite a direct parallel to what's going on today. Back then, the president was railing against muckrakers, and now we have a president railing against fake news. And, you know, it's the same concept. You know, it's attacking journalists who are trying to find answers to what's really going on. So in that way, it's a compelling read, just for those contemporary connections. But these were two really extraordinary people who did amazing work. And it was also sad, you know, that his life became so out of control and there was no help at the time, really. And, you know, as Ida could see, it wasn't just trying to help him. It was also trying to save the livelihood of people who were working at this major magazine that she helped build from ground up. So
yeah, it's complicated. And there wasn't the language back then for those sorts of struggles. You know?
Right. I just wanted to read you two paragraphs from early on. And back to the Standard Oil thing quickly. Ida grew up in Pennsylvania, in the area where oil was discovered, and her family was involved with that. And so one of the reasons she was really disturbed by the things that Rockefeller's business was doing with the antitrust stuff was that she saw firsthand how it destroyed people's lives when they were coming and sucking up all of these small companies, which again, taking it to today's situation, you could look at it as like companies encourage growth and competition because they want the competition to create things and then they buy it up. You know, you think about Facebook buying Instagram or like Amazon buying Goodreads, you know, things like that. So parallels. Anyway, Ida, this is her as a young girl. Ida Minerva Tarbell was hardly more than 3 when she led her baby brother Will down to the footbridge, hoisted him up, and threw him into the creek that flowed by her family's rough little house. His pale, voluminous baby dresses floated up bright against the current, and as he bobbed there, held up by the clothes for a minute, he began to scream. A neighbor quickly noticed what was happening and rescued the little boy. Examining Will's crumpled face as he was pulled from the creek, Ida was appeased. She had wondered whether the baby would float or sink. Classification, not fratricide, was her aim, and now she held the, quote, the peace of satisfied curiosity and the certainty that my brother belonged to the category of things which floated, end quote. Though pursuing the question earned her a spanking, it was well worth the experiment. So, I love that.
Yeah, curiosity from a young age.
Right? Yeah.
That's what you want in a reporter, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that. So many people of note make appearances in this book. Lots of famous, well, now famous writers who at the time were discovered by McClure. And somebody who I spent time with this summer also made an appearance. Well, she didn't, but her legacy did, Margaret Fuller. Ida Tarbell went to Allegheny College, and she was part of a literary society there called Asoli, which was Fuller's married name. And there's just a few lines about how Margaret Fuller's work impacted Ida Tarbell and her generation. Very cool. Love this book. If you're looking for some engaging historical nonfiction, Citizen Reporters by Stephanie Gorton is for you. And I plan on looking to see what else she's written because I really enjoyed this very much.
I finished a novel called Dream State by Eric Puchner. I have to admit this was not on my radar at all. I was participating in a little text chain with my old book club group. And Russell, who some of you know from Ink and Paper blog, who does our annual top 10 reads, posed the question, what's been your favorite book this year? And we had a little exchange. And then he said, I really recommend that, you know, we were kind of recommending books to each other that we thought we would like based on, you know, having read books together for so many years. We know each other's taste. And he thought I would enjoy this book, Dream State. And he was right. And I have to say that I read it. It's a chunkster. You could hold on to this as a big book summer read next summer. It comes in just over 400 pages. I read it and listened to it, and it was narrated by MacLeod Andrews, who did a great job narrating. And this is about Cece, who comes to Salish, Washington. She's there to plan her wedding and arrives a little bit early before her fiance, Charlie. And Charlie has a dear friend, Garrett, who they have asked to be the person who performs the ceremony. And Charlie asked Garrett to show her around Salish because he hasn't arrived yet. He's a doctor in training and quite busy. And so Cece and Garrett form a relationship, and then the wedding weekend comes and things don't go as planned. And I'm not going to spoil that for you. I will say that the novel covers about a 50-year time frame. So it is what I would call an epic. One of the things that stays the same is place. Salish, Washington, and the home there where the wedding took place are very important to the story. And one of the things that Puchner does that's really intriguing is he's looking at climate change. And when you look at a place over the span of 50 years, you really can track change. And Garrett, one of the main characters, is someone who goes into the wild. That's what his job is. And he is tracking wolverines and the extinction of animals. And that made me think of our buddy, Alice Henderson.
Yes. A Solitude of Wolverines.
Yeah, it reminded me of her book because there are some serious Wolverine scenes and, you know, they're pretty tricky animals. And he does have to, you know, the character has to tranquilize them. And they're these kind of fierce beasts, you know? So those scenes were kind of intense. But it's a study in climate change. It's a study in relationship, particularly marriage. And then as your marriages unfold and change over time. And I would say, like, on a sentence level, his writing is so beautiful. And there were just some things I marked because I thought the way that he said it was great. Like when you're frustrated with your partner, one of the sentences was, nonconformity, when you're married to it, ends up looking more and more like inertia. You know, so it's like you might be really attracted to that person because they were like, you know, thought outside the box or didn't want to, you know, take a typical job. But then, you know, when you're living with it over years, it might look a little different. So I really enjoyed this novel. Thank you to Russell for putting it on my radar. And once I entered it into Goodreads, I saw that a lot of people are enjoying it. And I think it's going to hit some people's top 10s this year, maybe even mine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Again, it's called Dream State by Eric Puchner. It really made me want to take a visit to Montana, which is a place I've never been. It sounds beautiful.
Nice. I love Montana.
You've been?
Yeah. I was actually in the process of interviewing for jobs there when I met Laura in Illinois.
Oh, wow.
Because I had just moved back to Illinois for a year, and then Laura and I met. She was in the process of considering moving to California. So then we stayed in Illinois for 9 years and moved to Connecticut.
Because, you know, that's how things go. Right? Exactly.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I read a book by Alma Katsu called FIEND.
Ooh.
I love the cover of this. Have you seen the cover?
No, but I know you've read her before.
Yes. This is, I think, like the fourth book of hers that I've read. She's usually a historical horror writer, but this is her first novel set in contemporary times. And the cover is really so attractive. So it shows like an older home, a mansion type facade that almost looks like a face with the windows lit up, like late 19th century, and then the modern city in the background and this dark cloud overhead. So I was kind of wondering about what that was about. And I was having a bit of a slump when it came to novels. I'm not really sure if Grady Hendrix kind of just, you know, I needed a break after Grady Hendrix. I don't know. And I was really enjoying the nonfiction I was reading. So I picked up a bunch of novels and nothing really stuck. So I just let it go for a while. And then when I started looking at novels again that I might be interested in, this one popped up. I have to read the dedication. To all the 7-year-olds whose souls starved, waiting for parental love and approval that never came.
Oh my gracious.
I know, right? I was just like, wow, what am I getting into here?
Whew, I have to take a breath after that one. That's intense, Chris.
It is intense. And it's an intense book. And having said that, she usually writes historical horror. Her horror is not, you know, the blood and guts kind of horror type. It's more like social commentary horror, I would say. And that's kind of what this is. It is about an extremely wealthy family. Their business goes back hundreds of years. It's a very ancient business that the father is the CEO of. So it's the Berisha family, I believe. And they're in New York. They have roots, though, in Albania. So roots to the old country. And the story is mainly about 3 siblings. It's Derdan, Maris, and Nora. And Derdan, he's just like 25, and he's being groomed to become the next CEO of the company. And he really doesn't want it. He's not a cutthroat kind of guy. I think, you know, he wants to probably more get married and have a family and live in, quote, normal life and not live this high pressure, high wealth type of lifestyle. You know, this is the kind of lifestyle that is like unimaginable for most of us. But anyway, he's the oldest son and the only son. So that is his lot. Maris is the middle child, the daughter, and the story goes back in time a little bit to when she was younger. So there are some chapters that go back and explain some of their childhood and just how cruel the older brother had been at times. I should also add that the mother and father, although they love each other, they don't live together.
Sometimes that's how you can keep loving each other.
Well, yes. In real
Sidebar.
life or horror novels. And then there's Nora, who's the youngest daughter, who, you know how it is with siblings. Everybody gets kind of pegged for what they, quote, are in the family. And Nora is the youngest child who's pretty much just kind of ignored and like better off, you know, seen and not heard type thing. And you find out a lot of things about that background, and that the family, it's rumored, has a curse, an ancient curse, where they've always told their children, it's a blessing. We're a blessed family.
That's, you know, the spin that families have on things. That's part of family heritage and inheritance.
Yeah. So there's a lot of this in this book, and sibling stuff happening. These three siblings are also different. And the dad is grooming Dardan, who's called Dan, to take over as CEO, and things get twisty. I was shocked at least a couple things that happened I didn't see coming. Maris had always wanted to be CEO. Dan didn't. Little Nora's been pushed off to the side, and family planning, CEO. But yeah, that succession planning doesn't go as planned. And I guess, you know, coming to think about that, there is a little blood that happens, a little violence, but it's all off the page in some ways.
I know someone who has historically written historical horror. It makes me wonder if she can really get away with writing a novel that doesn't have some sort of, you know, darkness.
Well, no, there is definitely darkness, and people die, you know, because it's titled Fiend. And this family has been wealthy for eons, and they've had this business for eons. And are they blessed or cursed? Yeah. Pick up the book. You'll find out.
You know, that concept of historical horror, that's what they said that The Last Witch by C.J. Cook that I talked about and currently reading, that it's a historical horror novel.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, I mean, I think it's a great way to explore history and bring history alive and teach people history. And Alma Katsu, like the other novels of hers that I've read, one was set during the Donner Party. Another was dealing with Japanese internment camps. And it's very, oh my gosh, sparse, I don't think is actually the right word for it, but there is not a lot of baggage in this book in terms of description and setting. Like, she paints a very clean picture, and that makes this really compelling. It's more about the people than the place. So you really get to feel like you're knowing the people, and you feel for some of them at different times. And then, of course, the whole big thing happens. Yeah, good book. Totally broke my fiction slump that I was in.
I'm so glad, because you were really, like, it was concerning you at one point. Like, I'm picking up all these novels and I just can't read.
Well, it was weird because I thought back to this quote from Philip Roth, this interview that I read with him. And, you know, he is a novelist. And he said in this interview, and I think he was in his 70s at the time, that he just didn't read fiction anymore because in some ways he didn't actually say been there, done that, but he was like, I want to learn more. So I'm reading nonfiction, and that's what I read. Fiction's just not doing it for me. And I thought, okay, I'm not 70, but is that what's happening to me? Is that fiction just not that interesting anymore? Which, you know, I just needed a break from it, I think.
I mean, I do think for myself, not to make it about me, but what I'm experiencing is I do pick up some things to read, and I'm like, I am just not interested in reading about this anymore. Like, I have read so much about it, or I don't want to really read about a 20-year-old's angst, maybe.
Oh,
you know?
For sure, yeah.
And so I think there are a lot of books I start now where I'm like, nope. And I know it pretty quickly. I used to be someone who couldn't DNF anything. You know, and now I can get 40 pages in and be like, not for me. You know?
Yeah, I did that with a bunch of books,
yeah.
a good handful of books, until, you know, I finally said, oh, just let it go and just stick with what you're enjoying reading.
Yeah.
Like, you don't, because my thing is, like, I like to read nonfiction in the morning and then fiction at night. And I thought, okay, just read your nonfiction at night. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's all
you can
good.
break your own rules. Yes.
Yeah. So really recommend this book. Fiend by Alma Katsu, a quick, thought-provoking read.
Yeah, I mean, just that epigraph makes me want to dig in, or dedication, I should say, makes me want to dig in. Well, I finished a cookbook that I learned about when I went to a Biblio adventure that I will talk about soon. It's called What Can I Bring? Recipes to Help You Live Your Guest Life. I love that. And this is by Casey Elsass, who I'm embarrassed to say I've never heard of. He has co-written or ghostwritten a lot of cookbooks and is known as a real friend of people in the cooking community. He also writes for the New York Times and some other outlets. And the point of this cookbook is really to answer that question of someone says, hey, come over to my house for dinner. And you say, what can I bring? And he has it separated into different segments of a meal, from drinks to appetizers, salads, desserts, that sort of thing. But he also has a system with the recipes that I found really fun. He has them marked at 3 different levels. It has the title of the recipe and then it will say the level. And the 3 levels are in your sleep, which means super easy recipe, roll up your sleeves, so a little bit more difficult. And then the third is bragging rights. And I thought, what a great way to make it friendly and help you really decide, what kind of cook am I feeling like today? What am I in the mood for? And he also talks about, in the beginning of the cookbook, know thyself. So if someone says, what can I bring? And you know that you're somebody who is frequently late to a party, you don't offer to bring the appetizers, for example. If you know that you might just be bopping in, maybe you bring the dessert or maybe you bring a drink. And he has some really fun drink recipes in here. I'm not much of a drinker, but I was impressed by how different they are. And some of them were really appealing to me. And he has some baking things, some salad things. It's a really fun cookbook. And I like his writing style. He has a very breezy writing style for what you call the head notes, where they talk about introduce the recipe. So I was having a little bit of a reading slump myself, and I got this from the library and sat down on one of our cold, rainy days and read it cover to cover, which for me is such a treat. I don't do that with my cookbooks very often. And I did end up making one of the drink recipes for our Thanksgiving meal out of it. And ironically, the drink was called a staycation, which is exactly what we were having. So I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. What Can I Bring? Recipes to Help You Live Your Guest Life by Casey Elsass. I also read More Than Enough by Anna Quindlen, who's one of my top 2 writers.
Ooh.
And this book, I know.
Top 2?
Well, she and Alice Hoffman fight for that position, so that's why I said that. You know me and my commitment issues. And this book comes out in February 24th. Thank you to Random House for allowing me to get an early copy, which I had promised myself I would wait to read and then have zero self-control when it comes to these sort of things. And, she's just such a good writer. I think The Gentleman Caller, we sat next to each other a lot over the Thanksgiving weekend reading, which was such a blessing. But I think he was kind of like, okay, I get it. She's a good writer. Because I kept saying, oh my God, she's such a good writer. She just is. Like she tells these stories that aren't necessarily, it's not necessarily the story that's so amazing. It's her writing that I find just on a sentence level is so good. But this takes place in present day, and it's about a woman named Polly Goodman. She's 40-something years old. She's an English teacher at a school for girls in New England. She's happily married, but they are struggling with fertility issues. And she has a group of friends, 3 dear friends, that they meet in a book club where the rule is they're not allowed to read the book, which just cracked me up because, how many people raise your hand if you're in a book club where you read the book and the people don't read the book and then you go to talk about it and end up talking about, I don't know, anything but the book. And I myself was in a book club that was like that. And we read one book as a group and then everyone decided they didn't want to read books. They just wanted to go out and eat dinner. So we started to do that. But what they did with this book club is they still insisted that they had to buy the book because they want to support the book industry. But the rule was you couldn't read the book, which just cracked me up. Anyway, so they would meet and just, had these friendships over the years. And as friends do, talk about their life circumstance. And at one point, the friends decided to give Polly an ancestry kit. And it was kind of a joke, But as those things turn out, the results don't always lead to people laughing about them. It changes her life. It opens up some things that she didn't know existed and has her questioning some of her family history and background. And I just wrote here, great writing, 3 exclamation points. It really is just about this woman's life and her friendships and the poignancy of your family dynamics. She marries a man that's wonderful. He's the baby, speaking of the book you were just talking about, the baby of 4 in a family that had like a lovely upbringing in a house in Connecticut on the Long Island Sound. And so what it was like for her as someone who's struggling with fertility, also to have this wonderful family that she's a part of, who's, you know, her husband's siblings are having children and have these great parents and things like that. So I think what Anna Quindlen does the best is just study relationships, you know, whether she's doing that in her nonfiction writing or she's doing it in her fiction writing. And I really enjoyed the story. And it was 250 pages, which is something else she's great at, you know, telling you a tale that doesn't last long, but that you enjoy. Right. Again, it's called More Than Enough by Anna Quindlen, and that is out at the end of February. You can pre-order it now. Well, I believe we read the last short story in our year of reading ghost stories in the Penguin Book of Ghost Stories.
We did. Can you believe it?
I can.
Oh.
No, I'm saying that in jest. One of my takeaways, because we're going to talk about the story Afterward by Edith Wharton, but we're also going to talk about our experience reading this book over the course of a year, correct?
Yes, we started in January. It's December, and I'm really glad that we chose this one. I mean, Penguin, they always come through. They put out quality anthologies. And I thought it gave us a really good introduction to different types of ghost stories over the last 200 years.
I agree. Yeah. And I think as I was reflecting on the reading of this, and we've spoken about this already a little bit, but in reflecting on the 4 books that we chose as our quarterly read-alongs, I felt like, wow, when I'm thinking back to these short stories and I read the introduction, like the qualities of these short stories appeared in all 4 of the novels that we read over the course of the year.
Yes.
And I thought that was so cool to reflect upon and made me really appreciate that we did take the time to study the genre through short stories.
Yes. I agree with, I think the Michael Newton, who is the selector of these stories and wrote the introduction, and Edith Wharton, in her introduction to her collection of ghost stories, talk about how short stories do ghost stories the best. Mm-hmm. That novels, it doesn't hold you as much as a ghost story.
Yeah, there's something about what I wrote down is the brevity of the short story was the term that he used in the introduction. And it's true that that is part of what keeps you turning the pages. And some of the stories in here were quite short and some were a little bit longer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say I didn't enjoy the novels that we read. I mean, but look at Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House was the shortest of the novels and my favorite of the 4 that we read. But yeah, I can't say that I enjoyed the reading of each of these stories, but looking back on them, I enjoy them and I'm really happy to have read them.
Agreed. I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Emily is sitting here with a piece of paper in her hand.
Well, I just took some notes on the introduction and I just thought I would read just some of the terms and things that they said. Like in the introduction, he did talk about the short story as a form, as you were saying, and then also kind of drilled it down to the ghost story form of short story. And one of the things that stuck out to me is they said humor is awkwardly present, which of course made me think of Grady Hendrix' How to Sell a Haunted House. And then also that they're often scientific investigation of spiritual phenomena, which I think is interesting, which is Haunting of Hill House, right? Oh, he also said, asked the question, what is a ghost? And part of that is engaging our mystification of death, which is true in so many of these short stories.
Yes, I underlined that one too.
And then endings being unresolved is a classic part of short stories as well. So those were the kind of the big takeaways that I took from rereading the introduction. Actually, I'm not sure I ever read it because I always listened to your advice about careful about reading introductions because they can spoil things.
Right. Yeah.
And I actually think it was helpful to read the introduction after because in the conversation in the introduction, he refers to the stories, of course, that we read. And it made more sense to me because I'd read the stories at that point. Right.
Yeah.
And then the only question I put at the bottom, and I kind of am putting you on the spot by asking this, but I just think of you as more someone who's much more literary than me, particularly with history, is did you think anyone was missing that should have been represented here?
That is a good question. I mean, Poe wasn't in here and neither was Hawthorne, but I didn't feel like they were missing necessarily.
I thought of Poe also. And of course, we read a Poe story on our own on the side, but Poe is referred to in the introduction. So I thought, oh, it's interesting that there's no Poe story.
But he's, more of a horror Gothic writer than a ghost story writer, and the same with Hawthorne in some ways, and that's the thing. One of the points that the introduction makes too is that, and this is from the very beginning of the introduction, that when critics discuss the ghost story, they often pay no more than lip service to the intended impact of the tale itself. And it made me think about Gothic, how popular Gothic is now. And that is more about the vibe of the story. It's more about the setting and the tone and not so much the impact. And that's what I think these ghost stories are. They make you feel things.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's why when you have a Gothic story that's really good, that's more than just scary, it makes you feel something for the characters. And that's what I felt with these stories. I know what I thought you had in your hand was a list of your favorites because we were supposed to come prepared to list our 3 favorites.
Top 3. You all know how much I love being, held to the fire of choosing my favorites. But I didn't know if we should talk about Afterward by Edith Wharton before we talk about our favorites in the event that that might be one of our favorites.
Sure, we could do that. That sounds good to me.
The last thing I wanted to say about the introduction was that Michael refers to most often the intruded on space of the ghost story is a house. And I thought that was interesting because, as you all know, who've been here with us all year, all of our 4 read-alongs had the word house in the title. And we were pretty excited to make that happen. And when I read that, I was like, oh, kudos on us that we did also make that a theme of our read-alongs.
Yeah, the house, because I think that's how at least Americans experience ghosts is through houses. I mean, there are more locations like hospitals, haunted hospitals, or especially old dilapidated insane asylums, or that's kind of classic.
Yeah. So Edith Wharton's Afterward, this was published in January of 1910. You've read it before, correct?
I have, yes.
So what was your experience of rereading?
Well, I think this is my 3rd time reading it. So I just appreciate that it seems to cross genres a little bit, like it's part mystery because there is an investigation, going on. I don't know how much we want to spoil things. Do
you want to just give like a really brief synopsis of what it's about?
Yeah, sure. It's about this American couple, a man and a woman, who have hit it big financially and are moving to England, and they're looking for a haunted house. They want a house with a ghost because they've come not to live a life of leisure. I love the way this is said in the story. They had a big windfall from the Blue Star Mine back in Wisconsin where they had lived. And it says they had never for a moment meant their new state to be one of idleness, but they meant to give themselves only to harmonious activities. So she was going to do some painting and gardening, and he dreamed of writing a book. So they're coming to do that, but they want a ghost. It's England. I thought about the Canterville ghost, that these old homes in England have a ghost. And they don't really find one for a while. Their friend who thinks about this house as kind of an afterthought says you don't really know about the ghost until afterward.
An afterword with an A, we should point out.
Yeah. So after. So they're living in this house. They're not feeling any kind of ghost. And then one day they're up at the top of the house through this like trapdoor looking around and they see somebody. and the husband goes racing out. And she comes down a little bit slower because she has vertigo or something. And the husband is just in his library acting like nothing happened. And she's like, what's going on? He's like, oh, nothing, which is odd. And then he eventually disappears. And she's trying to figure out where he went and what happened. Is that enough?
I think
of a
that's
summary?
enough.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of them, it's the unfolding is really pleasurable to read.
Yeah. And Edith Wharton does great ghost stories. I brought along 2 copies of her ghosts. She has her own collection of ghost stories that I highly recommend.
Yeah, they're compelling. I mean, we have talked about this when we drove up to the Mount in Lenox, Mass. one day, which is, I don't know, closes in on a 2.5, 3 hour drive. We had both read some of the New England ghost stories and we talked about them the whole car ride.
Yeah.
And they're, short stories. They're so compelling.
Yeah. But Wharton was a reader of ghost stories from, almost a young age. She always said she would never sleep in the same room with the ghost story. She even burned a book with a ghost story in it or something along those lines. But she was a real fan of the genre. So she really knew how to write a good ghost story.
And we've been told when we visited the Mount that there are people who say they have felt ghosts there and experienced ghosty activity.
Yes.
So maybe she became a ghost. Who knows?
Well, she didn't die there, so maybe it's not her. Maybe it's her husband, her ex-husband anyway. But yeah, what did you think of this story?
I liked it. I mean, it surprised me. It wasn't what I expected. And I thought the form of it was kind of interesting. There were these little chapters, or what they referred to as chapters. I think in the book, it was just like numbered, but on the audiobook, they said chapter. I thought it had some similarities to some of the other stories we've read about, like you were saying, wanting this house and wanting to live in the country and have these experiences. And it turns out that, I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler. It also, to me, is one of those stories that's about the people closest to you can be mysteries. And that is a little bit of a theme here because she learns things about her husband that she didn't know. And that's something that always, I find a very compelling part of any story because I believe that we're all mysteries, even to our partners. Yeah, so I liked it. I enjoyed it. Yeah. And I haven't read a lot. You've read so much more Wharton than I have. I haven't read a ton of Wharton. So I like her writing style.
I do too. And she, there's a letter involved. Newspaper clippings. I always like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it left a little bit to the imagination too, which I like as well.
Yeah. I have to admit, the first time I read this story, I was like, oh, okay, But the second time I read it, I was like, oh, okay. Like I got more of things she planted.
Subtle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's subtle. And I could see where a reread would be. I think a reread of a lot of these would be useful, but I'm not sure I'm going to do it. I have the audiobook, so I could see myself re-listening actually.
Yeah.
The audio production of this book, I should say, is really good. I recommend it if anyone is looking for a new audiobook. So is Afterward one of your top 3?
It is not.
Mine either.
Okay. Tell me. I'm so curious to hear yours.
I was really surprised. I first, when Chris said, reminder, we said we were going to try to pick our favorite 3. I thought, oh my gracious, this is going to be hard because there's more than a dozen, right?
There are 19.
Yeah. Yeah. So I decided to think about which ones stayed with me, so when I was just looking at the titles, thinking, were there some that jump out at me because there was some scene or some aspect of it that stayed with you? And that made it pretty easy for me. So the 3 I chose were What Was It? By Fitz James O'Brien. And this was the one about an invisible creature that attacks them. And they're in this boarding house. And then The Cold Embrace by Mary Elizabeth Braden. I thought this one was interesting because of the use of suicide, which is something that Michael talked about in the introduction. And a woman getting retribution on her man that is not of a high character. And then The Readjustment by Mary Austin, which is similar. A widower is haunted by a ghost of his wife, and the ghost gets some revenge. And it's about marriage and the pressures of raising a disabled child, which I found really compelling. And I also think what was really interesting about this the way this was set up was where you could read the author's biography. And some of the biographies were just so great, and then how it informed the writing of their stories.
Yes.
So those were my 3. It's kind of surprised me.
Yeah, interesting. Well, my 3 are different. I chose The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs just for the tension it creates. You know, because the conclusion of that, the last scene, I was just like, I was gripping, you know. And shockingly enough, The Jolly Corner by Henry James.
What?
I know. What is wrong with me?
That is hilarious.
Isn't it?
I think you had guilt. I think she had guilt about the title we put about that episode of Henry James is Dead to Us. That was the title. And I think she's worried that, you know,
he's going to come back and haunt me.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, for the same reason, for the tension it creates, you know, because again, while there's also that threat of suicide, yeah, it was the tension. And I felt the tension when I was reading it.
Which is what makes them memorable, I think.
Right.
So I get that.
And then my last one is tied with 4 others.
Oh, you did not.
I pulled an Emily Fine.
Oh, my goodness.
But I did, well, the one that I listed is The Wind in the Rosebush by Mary Wilkins Freeman. And that one for like the mystery of what was going on and then the nightmare horror quality of it.
I thought that one was going to be in my top 3.
Yeah.
So I was surprised. I really liked that story also.
So
I'm glad you chose that.
Yeah. And then I'll just give honorary mention. How about that? To the Moonlit Road by Ambrose Bierce because of the different perspectives. I like that. I thought that was a good example of an early story showing that. Elizabeth Gaskell's The Old Nurse's Story for the pathos of the situation that's evoked. And then what was it? Fitzjames O'Brien's because of the story and then also the horrors of colonialism that it brings up for a contemporary reader to us anyway, which it's not to say people back then didn't acknowledge or see the horrors of colonialism.
So that was the only one that crossed over for us. Yeah. I mean, I really thought of the nurse's story also, which was the first story in the collection as well. And then I definitely thought about the Rose one for sure.
Yeah.
I liked that a lot. So I mean, it was nice to just reflect on them because we had our funny moments of, you know, like, the drudgery of one of the stories or something. But in all, I'm really pleased that we read them. And I'm excited that the last episode of the year, our episode 250, we won't be talking about one of these, but maybe both of us will read something else ghosty to end the year. We'll see.
Right. We could read A Christmas Carol.
Oh, we could. That's on our bingo card.
Right. I mean, that's Dickens. And there's there are a lot of adaptations of that one as well. There was a new musical just a couple years ago of that, which was pretty good. Yeah,
I don't know that story. Maybe I'll watch an adaptation. That's a really good idea. 'Tis the season.
Absolutely.
So thank you to all of you who maybe, read along with us all year or maybe popped in here and there. We had a good time and thank you for indulging us in this year of reading ghost stories.
This episode is sponsored by
Let the Willows Weep by Sherry Parnell, a deeply felt, emotionally resonant story about a young girl growing up in the rural South, where hardship, quiet heartbreak, and the weight of circumstance shape the landscape as much as the land itself. Told with tenderness, grit, and an unforgettable voice, this novel explores resilience, loss, and the fierce hope that keeps us moving even when the world feels heavy. If you love character-driven fiction with heart, place, and lyrical storytelling, this is a book that stays with you long after the last page, and it's now available as a beautifully produced audiobook. Check the show notes for more information. So shall we talk about some Biblio adventures?
Yes, we have a big long list.
We do. Well, I'm going to say very briefly that I did watch the Chicken Sisters serialized TV show first episode. I didn't realize that it was on Hallmark, which meant that I had to pay for it, but I could watch the first episode for free, and I wrote blah next to it.
Okay.
Which isn't very generous, but basically I felt like, I'm not going to spend my time here. So I just thought I would share that with everybody because I did partially read the Chicken Sisters novel because I wanted to watch the serialized show, but I am not going to carry forth.
All right. Good to know. Well, we watched something not necessarily together, but around the same time, because a gentleman caller recently read Dracula by Bram Stoker for the first time and chose Coppola's adaptation, his 1992 adaptation, which is titled Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Which my Dracula loving friend over here had some attitude about.
Totally. I just think it was really inappropriate to call it Bram Stoker's Dracula when he took so many liberties with the storyline. Like, why?
Familiarity?
I mean, most people don't even know who the hell Bram Stoker is.
Interesting.
They don't. They know who Dracula is.
Yeah.
You know?
The gentleman caller has been talking to Chris for the last couple of years about getting a copy of Dracula and reading it. And he did. I can't remember. We were at a bookstore. Oh, Titcomb's bookshop in Sandwich, Mass. And he found a nice Penguin Classic copy of the book and has been reading it. And then asked me if I would watch the movie with him. And when I told Chris that I was going to do that, she said, it's very bloody. And for those of you who know me, you know that's not my first choice. But I held his hand and we watched the movie. There were a couple scenes where I did need to look away. But I also just thought, like, it was some of the stuff was interesting to me, and I don't really know much about Dracula or themes of Dracula. So I would like to know your take as a Dracula expert on this adaptation, because Chris had watched it originally and it wasn't her favorite. She made that very clear, but she decided to do a rewatch so we could talk about it together.
I did. Yeah. The rewatch, I probably have matured a little bit since I saw it when it first came out in 1992. At least I like to think I have. A while ago. Yes.
30 years.
I used to be such a purist. So it really offended me when he took so many liberties and he called it Bram Stoker's Dracula, which it's not Bram Stoker's Dracula. But if he had just called it Dracula, I probably would have been okay with it. What did I think of this movie as a movie? I thought it really didn't do a good job at storytelling. I think it relied more on the splash factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a lot of blood.
Yeah.
A lot of nipples, like women's breasts exposed.
Like women, you know, writhing on the bed sheet with her breasts exposed. Let's just say a male fantasy of what a woman looks like when she's aroused and her breast is hanging out. Lots of that.
And licking.
Yes.
Lots of licking.
Lots of licking.
It was hard for me to get past that. And it was even harder for me to look at Jim and I'd be like, what's with all the nipples? And he was like, what do you mean? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that is, you know, I mean, Dracula was published in the late 19th century. So there's a lot of sexual undertones and, you know, maybe not so much under sometimes. But, you know, this storyline really enhanced that aspect.
I mean, he explained to me that he had these women at home, right? Like this, I mean, I can't remember the term he used, but there were like they were supposed to be like the most beautiful women in the world or something that were.
Well, in the book, there are 3 women who live with Dracula in his castle who are thought to be like his kind of wives. They're not called that. And they kind of like hypnotize Jonathan Harker, who's the solicitor who's coming from London to help Dracula with his paperwork to buy places in London. And
this in the Francis Ford Coppola movie is played by a very young Keanu Reeves.
Right. And these 3 vampire women, I mean, it's quite sexual in the book, but the movie completely like creates this orgy scene that is not in the book.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they don't take his blood either in the book because Dracula, and this is one of those things where Dracula comes in because Jonathan's been exploring the castle and he falls asleep in this room and he wakes up with these 3 women and
crawling up and licking him with
nipples. No, they're not doing any of that, but Dracula comes in, like they're kind of approaching him.
Right. Oh, that's right. They're like crawling up in a creepy way.
In the movie, right? But in the book, Dracula, and I don't, you know, he comes in and he says, he's mine, you know,
right.
And he throws them a baby to eat. So,
as one does,
right. So they're in the book, but the ones in the movie were just, I mean, the movie was over the top in a lot of ways.
Right. I mean, there were also these like weird interludes where there's just like blood, what do you call it?
Red blood cells.
Red blood cells like just creeping across the screen. That was weird.
Well, this is done like, during the AIDS epidemic. And so blood was really on a lot of people's minds. I mean, because it was the carrier of the virus, and very frightening for a lot of people. And so, that's why, people theorize there is so much blood.
Interesting. I mean, one of the things that I found interesting but / distracting was how Dracula looked.
Yes.
And how he changed in different scenes. And so some of the scenes where he's older, he's got like this flourishy, big blonde wig.
So stupid.
And I woke up the next morning and we're eating breakfast and I said to Jim, so like, talk to me about the wig. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I said, Dracula, like the image that I can't get out of my mind is this like old guy with a blonde, big updo wig. Like, was that something that Bram Stoker, is that how he described the look of Dracula?
No. But in the movie, he changes a lot based on the blood he's drinking, I suppose. In the book, that happens too. Like, he's old at the beginning and he gets younger the more blood he drinks.
Oh, I see.
And I think he's an ancient man, an ancient vampire, I should say. And I think part of the reason he's moving to London is to be where there's more blood and more life so that he can consume that life and be younger. So he does go from like gray hair in the book, I'm pretty sure, to being dark haired.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Bela Lugosi, that 1930, is it 38 or 39? Like, that is Dracula. Like, he's the one who set the visuals for what Dracula looks like for a long time.
And it matched what your imagination was when you read the novel?
Well, yeah, because I read the novel because of the movie.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because I love the movie so much because it would come on Creature Features occasionally, and I loved it. It was my favorite. And then when I saw that there was a book of Dracula, that's when I was like, oh.
I see. So you read it, and it's like kind of like people who come to the Harry Potter stories a few of the films in, and then they can imagine what Harry Potter looks like.
So then, okay. So that's one reason I'm a purist with things like that. And I mean, I haven't rewatched the movie in a while. And it's black and white, and it's very slow. Like, I had a friend, a couple of friends have watched it. I should say two of my friends fell asleep while they were watching it because it's so slow and there's no sound at times. Oh, it's like they don't make movies like that anymore, where you're just watching Dracula slowly walk up the stairs in black and white.
And our TVs were black and white, so it was all fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that was movie theater, But that is, I think, still a very good, faithful adaptation.
I meant your TV was black and white when you were a kid watching it.
Oh,
probably.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally.
So that's interesting. Well, I'm glad that I didn't read the book.
Well, you know what? I think you would like the book. I do, because I think the book has so much, and Stephen King wrote a really good introduction to one of the editions. I don't know if I still have it or not, where, he talks about how all of the tools that Bram Stoker shows characters using were like cutting edge at the time.
Interesting.
Typewriters and dictaphones and, the telegraph. Was the telegraph in there? I think it was. But there's letters, there's journal entries, there's newspaper clippings. Like, it's told through all of that.
Yeah.
And I think you would kind of like that. One of the guys, I forget the author's name. He's the man who wrote Rambo. His name is escaping me right now, but he considers it the first serial killer novel.
Oh, interesting.
He's like, if you take out all the supernatural stuff, it's a serial killer novel.
Interesting.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Huh. Well, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Read the book and then don't watch the movie.
The great Chris Wallach has spoken.
Well, what did you guys think of it over? Like, what did Jim think of it?
Jim loved it. He'd seen it before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
He'd seen it before. I tolerated it.
Yeah.
And was very glad when it was over. But I mean, I'm always game to watch a movie, unless it's something really like when I watched Silence of the Lambs, I was like, I'm never watching a movie again where I feel like, I could be watching a movie about my neighbor. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want, there's a certain creep factor. Serial killers are one of them.
Yeah.
That I'm just not interested in. I don't want certain images in my mind.
Yeah.
But I felt like this one was so silly in a certain way.
It was so silly
that
in
it
a
didn't
way.
bother me.
Yeah. Like Van Helsing. Anthony Hopkins plays Van Helsing in this adaptation. Winona Ryder plays Mina.
Right.
And he's like, I'm here to protect you. And then he starts kissing her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this makes no sense.
It's very misogynistic.
No sense. Yes.
It really
and it's just
is.
like, so what, did Anthony Hopkins just want to kiss Winona Ryder, and he's like, hey, add this line in the movie. Because, I mean, that's what it felt like. It made no sense. And that's what I'm talking about, like the storyline. It just wasn't a good, the story wasn't presented in a good way, or even presented in the character way.
Well, it seems as if it holds up as not being Chris's favorite. So watch the Bela Lugosi, but just make sure you have toothpicks for your eyeballs, it sounds like.
Just don't watch it at the end of the day when you're tired.
Or give yourself a couple nights to get through it or something.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, the same director who made that also made the Spanish version at the same time. So if you buy the DVD, if anybody does that anymore, the one that I purchased had the Spanish version as well as the English version because they use the same set.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh. I had the opportunity to go see Dory Greenspan in conversation with Casey Elsass. That's how I learned about Casey, who wrote that cookbook, What Can I Bring? I had never heard of him. I have very much heard of Dory Greenspan, and she was there to talk about her new cookbook, Anytime Cakes, which was a book she wasn't planning to write, which is something I learned that evening. She is a contributor to the New York Times, and they had asked her a couple holidays ago to write an article with a couple of recipes about cakes. And they wanted something very specific, I think like fancier cakes. And she was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But I would be interested in writing about one bowl easy cakes. And they said yes, which she wasn't expecting. And then in the process of researching and recipe testing these recipes that she wrote about, she realized that she might have a book in it. And that is the result, Anytime Cakes. And it was really a sweet conversation. Casey is younger. He lives in Brooklyn. He's a gay guy in a relationship. He's very social, which is, what you can see with this cookbook that he wrote. And he ran into Dory Greenspan at a Stop and Shop in Old Saybrook, which is near where we live on the shoreline. She has a house in, I believe, maybe Madison, Connecticut, and then New York City and Paris. And they ran into each other and he recognized her and a friendship bloomed. And that's how he came to be the person who hosted this event. The only other thing I want to say about it is I have mentioned before on the podcast that this is the first cookbook I've ever seen where there are no photographs. It's all illustrations. Dory talked about the reason that happened. And Casey used a term that I'd never heard where he said, talk to us about the visual language of your cookbook, which I thought was such an interesting way to pose the question. And she said that, I won't talk about how it all came to be, but it did end up that she got into a partnership with this artist who did all of the illustrations. I didn't write that down. I'll put that in the show notes. But she said what she failed to realize is typically with a cookbook at the very end in the production phase, once you've done all your recipes and everything, you have a time period where you cook the recipes and photograph them. Classically. But she realized that it would take more time for the illustration. So they had to be working as they went with this artist to produce the recipes so she could have images and make these drawings. So really interesting. And she said she did have to push back because Casey asked that, was the publisher willing to do this? Because it's very unusual. And she said, no, I had to push back. And she has a little gravitas at this point in her career. So it was a really charming conversation, and I recommend both of these cookbooks, Dory Greenspan's Anytime Cakes and Casey Elsass's What Can I Bring? Both of them would make great gifts, actually, for the holidays if you're still looking for something or for yourself.
Nice. Well, the joint Biblio adventure that we went on in real life was to Boston. We went to see Einichen Braithwaite in conversation with
Hannah Halprin
at the Harvard bookstore.
And then we're thrilled to walk in and see Hank Philippi Ryan sitting in the audience, who we feel like we've met because we've interviewed her or talked with her several times, but always via a computer screen. So it was fun to run into her.
Yeah, so great to meet her in person and chat a little bit before the event started.
Yeah, she's a big fan of Oinkens and was a fan of her debut novel, My Sister the Serial Killer. So she was there to support her for this event.
Yeah, which cracks me up because one of the things Oinken said is that she wasn't going for humor with My Sister the Serial Killer, which surprised me. I mean, I listened to the audio version of that. And there was some good, like, dry humor. And I think it was her mom said to her, because she was surprised that people thought it was kind of funny. And her mom said, well, it sounds just like you.
Right.
You know?
And she had some little funny, quippy things she said that night. So I think she's just one of those people that doesn't realize that she's funny.
Exactly, because she calls the works that she hasn't completed the land of unfinished stories. And she referred to that a couple times because she told this funny story that, well, didn't start off funny, but she was very ill during her pregnancy and her dad came to live with them. And he eventually started harassing her to not be a one-hit wonder and write another book and finish something.
Not only to not be a one-hit wonder, but that she was taking too long, so people were going to forget about her.
Right.
So he was like, you know, not only do you need to write, but get busy. And there she is pregnant, and she was suffering from, I can't remember the name of it, but the illness when you're pregnant where you just throw up constantly.
Yeah. So she wasn't doing very well, but he challenged her and he gave her a deadline. And she's like, I didn't make the deadline, but it worked. I had a second novel finished because she has this, you know, land of unfinished stories that she referred to several times. But it was a really wonderful event and tons of great questions afterwards. Sometimes at author events, there may not be a lot of questions. And this one, time was up and they had to, you know, say, we'll take one more, but really engaged audience.
Yeah. And she read from the prologue at the very beginning and it captivated me. It made me want to read it. It's about family legacy and inheritance. And there's magical realism, which I find interesting.
Yes. Yeah. I haven't read the book yet, but it sounds...
I don't think we said the name. It's Cursed Daughters.
Cursed Daughters, right. And she told... That's the thing. I'm looking at a note as you say that, because when she was talking with the publishers about a title for it, the first one they proposed was A Curse on All Your Daughters.
Right.
And she's like, okay, no, because you'll lose the entire African diaspora if you name a book that. Like, nobody's going to buy it, you know? So then they just went with Cursed Daughter.
Yeah, they compromised.
Yeah. Yeah, what did she say? For Westerners, they'll see a book as magical realism, whereas for Nigerians, they may not see it as that, but more as a curse, because she talked about curses in the culture and how, you know, devastating it can be. That it could just be something along the lines of like, no one in my family has ever completed college. We're cursed, so why bother going to college? She's like, you know, we really have to fight against these limiting beliefs that we have that aren't even ours. Like she talked about not liking her arms. And she's like, this is not my insecurity. It's something that I absorbed from the women, the older women around me. You know, she's like, we really have to fight against these things from our families or from societies that are not ours and that are holding us back, basically.
Yeah, inherited.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a great speaker. And as Emily said, humorous.
Yeah, it was a really fun night. And it was followed by, we should say this happened at the Harvard bookstore. So we got to do a little shopping. It's a beautiful bookstore and they have a great used section in the basement floor. But we had gone early and spent the day. We started by walking campus and we went to the Houghton Library, which Natalie Dykstra had talked about on episode 247. So it was fun to be walking in there after she had just talked about it.
Yeah, they had a big Edward Gorey display.
Yeah, it was really cool because it's an archive, a library with archives, and they have a lot of his archives. Some were things that had never been seen before because he was a Harvard student and his roommate had given them his collection of things that Edward had, you know, like birthday cards and things that he had sent him that were very private in nature so that we would have never seen them as the public. It was a great exhibit. People were laughing, you know, as they were walking through. And then we went to the stationery store.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah, got some gifts and personal items there, or personal gifts, I should say. And we visited the Grolier poetry shop,
which is literally right around the corner from the Harvard bookstore. So that was a pleasant surprise. It was very small, kind of a little dark. And when we walked in, there was a poet there who was, I don't know, she was exchanging something with the bookseller. And so she seemed a little needy and just wanted to really talk to him. And so we didn't get his attention at all. I actually wanted to ask a question and felt like there was no room, there was no opening for that. It was okay. And so we went around the corner and went into the Harvard bookstore, and it was a great day. It was so fun to spend the day with you there.
Yeah, we had perfect weather and walked around campus. And at one point we were talking about, I wonder which one is the oldest building on campus. And somebody from Harvard was walking by, and he's like, I can answer that if you're interested. We're like, yes, please. And he pointed out some of the older ones, like the one where the president's office is. He's like, the British Army occupied that building. It's one of the older original buildings. And now it has like a secret tunnel. And that's how the president accesses things. And there's also dorms at the top of it with a different entrance. So it's interesting to get
very
some
friendly.
Very friendly guy who pointed some things out.
And he also told us about the Harvard Art Museum. And so we popped in there too and shopped in their gift shop, which was wonderful.
Yeah, we both bought a couple gifts there. And I also bought a book for myself there called Pencil by Carol Beggy. And this is from Bloomsbury. It's part of their Object Lessons series. So it's a small format book all about the pencil. And I love pencils. So
yes, very cool stop. That was our day in Harvard.
Yeah.
Or Boston, I should say. It was
and
lovely.
we ate at a place that you've been jonesing to go to.
Yes, we ate at Flower Bakery and Cafe, which has several outposts in the city. And the owner, whose name is escaping me, has cookbooks as well. She's someone that has had another career. I don't remember if she was a lawyer, she was something, and then decided to follow her love of baking. And I have to say, I was surprised that their savory food was so good. I mean, I took home some pastries, but I feel like the sandwich you got and the salad I got were just divine.
Yes, really yummy, really crowded, but we scored some seats.
We did.
Yes.
Well, you had another Biblio adventure.
Yeah, Laura and I had a vacation trip to celebrate her birthday. We went to Rhode Island, where we tracked down all of the trolls that are in Rhode Island, created by the artist Thomas Dambo. He has 5 throughout the state, and I believe I read that his wife is from Rhode Island, which is one reason why there are so many trolls in Rhode Island. So that was fun. We stayed in Newport and took a couple days to just drive out to them. We took one of our dogs with us, which was fun. And gorgeous trolls. Some of them take a little bit longer to get to. Others are right there at, say, a parking lot, just a really short walk to get to in a park. They're in state parks quite often. So that was a lot of fun. And then we went to, well, I should say, to get to one of the trolls, we had to drive through Warren, Rhode Island, and we saw Inkfish bookstore, which it was Thanksgiving Day that day. And I was like, oh, they're closed.
And Jim and I have biked past it twice on Mondays, and they're closed on Mondays. So we need to make an effort to just get in the car and go.
It's so close. Yeah, it's so close. So then after Newport, we went to Cape Cod for a few days, and we'd never been there before and had a wonderful time. We stayed in Provincetown at a bed and breakfast, and it was wonderful. Neither one of us likes crowds. So to be there on season would be probably hellacious for us. But to be there off season, especially Sunday was great because it was kind of rainy. So there were fewer people out and about. But like Saturday night, it was a holiday weekend. So there were more people there probably visiting and families meeting up maybe. But it was really cool to finally see P-Town. It's such a iconic place. And we had a fun time around there. I did stop into Tim's used books. I was looking for a copy of Clover Adams, Natalie Dykstra's first biography. And the bookseller I spoke with, he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, we've had that one. He's like, it's been maybe a little time since I've seen it, though. He's like, it would come in and out pretty regularly. Unfortunately, they didn't have one. So I just ended up ordering a used one from a secondhand seller online because it's out of print. So that is some book mail I'm looking forward to. Yeah. We did drive by the Provincetown bookstore, but it was closed already. So another reason to go back, although that wouldn't be quite as convenient because P-Town takes some time to get to. But, other things we did, Emily gave us a really nice list of some recommended places to stop. And so we did stop at the market in Wellsfleet because we needed some provisions. And they also sold books there, which was great. So I browsed a little bit.
I don't think I told you that. I left that as a secret discovery, right? I don't think I told you that they have.
I think you told me.
Did I tell you?
You
I
did.
did spoil the secret.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and like new books and some used books. It was really great. One that I saw and I did not buy for obvious reasons was Helltown, The Untold Story of a Serial Killer on Cape Cod by Casey Sherman. This is, nonfiction true crime.
Oh my gosh.
A serial killer who,
No, thank you.
in the 1970s. But I took a photo of it because I thought, that might be one to read now that I'm gone off the Cape.
But if you ever go back.
I know, right? Yeah. And then we did stop at a bunch of lighthouses. So we did trolls and lighthouses, I should say, in Rhode Island. So gorgeous there. Visiting lighthouses at night is our new thing, too.
Oh, fun.
Which is so easy to do in the winter, because it gets dark so early. I mean, it's really great to see lighthouses in the daytime, too. But to visit them at night, it's revelation. Yeah. One that has a literary connection is the Highlands Lighthouse, which was the first lighthouse built on the Cape in 1796, commissioned by George Washington. That one burnt down, but Henry David Thoreau visited the remade lighthouse in the 1850s. Oh, he visited the family there twice. I like the sign that called him an early Cape Cod tourist because it's funny to think of Thoreau as being a tourist,
right?
But he was.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then on the way home, I wanted to stop in Sandwich to see the town, and the library was closed though. It was a Monday, and they're closed on Mondays. But we went into the really cool weather store that's right next door. They have a lot of antique weather tools, and then also new digital ones. And what's cool is how you often see the one that has the temperature, the humidity, and what wind maybe sometimes, and how they're on porthole type gauges. The gauges are in porthole looking things. They have that, but that are digital.
Oh,
and
cool.
I was like, that is so cool to harmonize the new technology with the old vibe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a wonderful trip, and we were so happy to finally make it to the Cape and really just fell in love with it. We did some nice beach walks at different beaches. Had a great time.
Glad. I thought about you guys the whole week because I just love it there. And, the gentleman caller introduced me to the Cape very soon after meeting him. It was 3 months in. He said, "Hey, I go on an annual trip to the Cape. Do you want to come?" And it's like, sure, okay. And I've loved it ever since. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it really is. We enjoyed it so much. And this was our puppy's inaugural road trip, and he did a great job. So
awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, wonderful trip.
Well, should we talk about upcoming jaunts?
Yeah, go for it. I have nothing on my horizon right now. My last day of work before winter break is next week. And I have this glorious empty calendar
Nice.
until January. I can't wait.
Well, this is one you might want to add. It's a virtual season pass to Aspen Winter Words. The Aspen Literary Festival takes place in the warmer months, but they have some authors that come in for conversations during the winter, which is a really brave move, I have to say, considering how hard it can be to get to Aspen. And I discovered this one year when I went to visit my son, Jacob, who lives in Carbondale, which is just a couple towns over. I went there for my birthday. And so I looked to see what could be fun to do for my birthday and got us tickets to the Aspen Words Festival to see Ann Patchett in conversation with Elizabeth McCracken, which is a highlight biblioadventure for me, like a lifetime highlight biblioadventures. I get their emails now because I bought tickets, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that the lineup for these take place January through February. There's 3 of them, but they're offering in-person tickets. So if you're in the area or plan a trip to that area, you might want to check this out. Or there's virtual pass where you pay $35 and you can see all 3 events, which I think is lovely. So This is going to be one of my holiday gifts to myself. And the 3 authors are Susan Orlean, talking about her new memoir, Joyride, Lily King, talking about her novel, Heart the Lover, and Tara Roberts, talking about Written in the Waters, which is a nonfiction that talks about, I think, the history of slavery in some form. I didn't dig into any of these very deeply, but all 3 of those are people that I'd like to hear in conversation. So I'll put a link in the show notes to how you can purchase, get more information about it and how you can purchase this virtual season pass, which is my plan. And they take place not one on top of each other, but stretch through January and February, the dates. So that's all I've got on my calendar. How about upcoming reads?
I do have a couple upcoming reads on my horizon. One, well, you know what? These are both coming out in 2026. Actually, there's 3. I lied. I'll go in order of publication. So the first one is Beth is Dead by Katie Barnett. This is coming out January 6th from Simon & Schuster Children's Publishing. And it's like a YA, young YA, I believe. And the Beth is the Beth of Little Women.
That's great.
So Beth is found dead on New Year's Day, and her sisters start investigating why she died, who killed her, and then they start suspecting one another. Yes. Nice. Meg, Jo, Beth, Amy. Oh, Meg, Jo, Beth, Amy. Okay.
That's 4.
All right. So the other 3.
We can't do math.
Oh, my God. How can I forget that? Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I just got a copy from NetGalley, so thank you to the publisher NetGalley for that. Also, I want to give a shout out. Pre-order links are now live for my friend Sharon Harris's new biography coming out, Her Life in Ink. This is a biography of Elizabeth Jordan that I'm really looking forward to. That's coming out on February 10th from Globe Peacoat, and we'll put a link in the show notes. And then the last one I want to mention is a book that just showed up at Book Cougar headquarters. It is Kathleen Rooney's forthcoming novel, Man Overboard. And this one comes out July 7th from Gallery Books. We are both looking forward to this one.
It has a great cover.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about a book that's coming out in March called Finley Donovan Crosses the Line. This is the 6th book in Elle Cosimano's Finley Donovan series. I love this character. She's a single mother who is an author by trade, who's always on deadline and running past deadline. But these murders that happen keep getting in the way. It's really fun. A great cast of characters. And I said it comes out March 17th, 2026. Thank you to Minotaur for this early copy. I also got a cookbook that I'm excited about called Still We Rise, a love letter to the Southern Biscuit with over 70 sweet and savory recipes by Erica Council, chef and owner of the Bomb Biscuit Company in Atlanta. I listened to an interview with her and immediately put this cookbook on hold at the library. I love a biscuit. So looking forward to digging into her recipes. And then when I went to pick that book up, I was so pleasantly surprised to see in our quick pick section of our library in Guilford, Some Bright Nowhere by Ann Packer. This is Oprah's current book club pick. Ann Packer is one of my favorite authors, and she doesn't put books out very often, so I forget to look, to see if she has something coming out. She wrote a book called The Dive from Clausen's Pier. That is one of my favorite books of all time. She likes to tackle difficult situations. She doesn't shy away from those in her writing. And she was also an author at my very first Booktopia in Santa Cruz. And she was there with her book, Swim Back to Me. And I'll never forget sitting in, it was a really small room, and to be in this space with this woman who wrote this novel, Dive from Clausen's Pier, that had been so formative in my life. And there she was talking about this novel. And I remember sitting with Anne Kingman and, getting to ask her a question. And then I went to have the book signed, and it was already signed. And I was like totally confused by that. And she was like, have I met you before? And I said, no. And to this day, I don't know I must have just bought a signed copy and didn't know it. So we had a nice little exchange around that. So that's all I've got.
Well, we debated whether or not to talk about our next topic, but we've decided to talk about it. And that is our 2026 read-along theme.
We debated whether to talk about it. That's a nice way of saying we made you listen to the entire episode before we decided to tell you what it is. I'm really excited about this one, but I guess I should be careful not to hype it up too much.
Yes. Well, this one was inspired by my new dog, Roby, who is named after a Cary Grant character in To Catch a Thief, which is based on a mystery novel by the author whose name I forget, and maybe a little bit of Dracula.
A little bit of The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock.
Based on the story by Daphne du Maurier.
And, I watched Rebecca and I read Rebecca. and watch the film. So we realized that we've maybe been like building up to this theme for next year throughout this year without realizing it.
Yeah, we wanted to do something really fun. One of our other ideas was to do something around America's 250 anniversary. And I got tired just doing some research on it. And I was like, I don't know, Emily, this one, you know, it might be there might be so much other stuff going on for America 250. And if I'm already tired now, just doing some research, let's think of something else. So,
and it also felt heavy.
It did.
You know,
yeah.
like, you know, we want to be good citizens and read about history, but we couldn't figure out a way to do it and keep it kind of light, and also to keep it not big, heavy tome books. And we also don't want to try to pretend to be experts on anything political.
Well, yeah. And we just figured there's going to be a ton of other historical celebration America stuff.
Yeah.
As Oinken Braithwaite said, like, she likes to entertain and be an escape for her readers. So she balances the light and the dark, which is what we're going to do with some of our selections for 2026. They might have some dark themes, but there'll also be light because there'll be laughter and adaptations, good and bad.
Ooh, so she just dropped a little Easter egg.
Yes.
She used the term adaptations. So what we are going to be focusing on next year is book to film adaptations.
Yes. Or books that have had film adaptations. Because we're going to be reading the books, and then we're going to be watching an adaptation of the book, the novel, the short story, the memoir, maybe. Lots of options. We don't have them all picked out because we kind of like to do that as we go along. But the first book has been chosen.
Yes. And we're going to do what we've done lots of times in the past. We're going to go with a classic to start. Just like this year of reading ghost stories, we went with a Shirley Jackson. We are going to go with a classic book to film adaptation to start first quarter. Drum roll.
The book is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley.
For those of you who commonly watch films, you might be aware that there is a new Frankenstein adaptation that just came out recently, directed by Guillermo del Toro. So that's part of what we were thinking about, but there are also plenty of Frankenstein adaptations.
Yes, the book was published in 1818, and I'm not sure when the first adaptation was. I mean, Boris Karloff is kind of the iconic Frankenstein, which is a misnomer because he's actually Frankenstein's creature, and Dr. Frankenstein is his creator. So reading the novel is going to be really interesting for a lot of people, I think, if you have Boris Karloff in mind as Frankenstein.
Right. Or if you think you know the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Because the novel is quite different. But Mary Shelley, you know, she is the founder of science fiction. She doesn't get credit as being the earliest practitioner of science fiction writing. This is also Gothic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. We will also be making that our Patreon giveaway January 2026.
Yes. And we haven't selected dates yet for the read-alongs, but it will probably be late February, early March.
Yes. More to come on actual dates. We will try to have that announced in the last episode of December, which is we have 3 episodes in December, so it's the very end of the month. We will also be reminding you of our listener top 10 that we will be collecting. We'll open that up. We make an online Google document where you can list your favorite 10 books of the year, but we wait until after the first of the year to open that up.
Yes, because you could be reading one of your favorites and you finish it on the 31st. So we want to make sure that everybody has the full year. And these are not just books that are published in 2025. It's whatever you read. So if you read Frankenstein, published in 1818 this year, and it's one of your top reads, you know, it's one of your top 10s. So don't let publication years get in the way. Ooh, it could be interesting to see if any overachievers decide to read Frankenstein at the end of this year to be ready for next year. Oh, interesting.
Yes, we encourage that behavior, but no pressure. And then did we mention also that we are going to do a bingo card for our book to film adaptation year, but also a reminder that if you've been participating in the Ghost Story bingo card, please take a picture of it and email it to us at bookcougars@gmail.com if you'd like to be entered to win the gift card for bookshop.org, which we do as a, exciting thank you to one lucky participant
for playing along. And email that to us by December 31st at midnight. Time-stamped.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I don't think we have anything else to say except thank you, everybody. And we wish you lots of happy reading.
Thanks for listening to The Book Cougars with Chris Wallach and Emily Fine. We'll be back again with another episode in 2 weeks. Until then, come chat with us on social media, Goodreads, or email us at bookcougars@gmail.com. If you'd like to help support our podcast, please tell others about us, leave a review wherever you listen, and consider becoming a patron. Even $1 a month is a big help. Learn more about that on our website, bookcougars.com, where you'll find the show notes for this and all of our past episodes.
Thanks, everybody.
This episode was edited by Pat Keogh Sound Design.